Here we are in our last writing workshop during the drafting phase of our theme essay. I'm going to focus on how to write the closing paragraph today. I find leads and closings to be the most challenging paragraphs to write because they're so abstract. So just like I did for the lead writing workshop, I'm going to break this down for you into 3 sections or 3 steps to make a really strong closing. Just like a great lead, the best closings are going to circle back to the big picture of your essay. Remind your reader how the evidence, all that detail you gave in your body paragraphs, proves your claim as to what you think the theme is in this particular story. And you're going to talk about why your thinking about this should matter to the reader of your essay as they move forward in their reading life. Now that last part, that may seem kind of strange and weird and you don't know what I'm talking about, so I'm going to break it down for you. Here's the recipe for a closing paragraph in an analytical essay on theme. You start by circling back to that big picture, your theme claim. Then you're going to talk about how those details in the body build towards that theme claim. And finally, you're going to expand these ideas to other stories your reader might encounter one day. So we're going to start by circling back to that big picture, that theme claim. Let me just remind you of what my theme was. The author uses Rosara's experience to make the reader think about the fact that some experiences, which help us grow up, can be painful and disappointing. Well, I don't want to repeat that word for word, so you'll see here what I'm going to say when I get to the end is that many young people can't wait to grow up, to be seen as mature and to be given independence. But the process of gaining these things can be marked by painful and disappointing experiences. These first 2 sentences of my closing paragraph recap that idea in my theme, bring it back to the real big picture after all those details in those body paragraphs. Now I'm going to work on part 2. And in part 2, I have to talk about how all those details in the body built towards my theme. Here's a tip. Look back at the closing sentences you wrote for each body paragraph. Each body paragraph should end with a sentence that kind of recaps the main idea of that paragraph, the whole point you were trying to prove in that paragraph. Those closing sentences were like mini conclusions for each body paragraph. So let me refresh your memory about what my body paragraphs were about. My first body paragraph was really proving that she's growing up. I was using evidence to show that she's trying to exert independence from her mom and separate a little bit from mom, so as part of the growing up process. My second body paragraph was focused on showing that Rosara thinks throughout most of the story that things are going pretty well for her. She thinks that she's kind of proving her mother wrong throughout the party and that she really is mature enough to understand the situation better than her mother did. My third body paragraph, however, is devoted to showing that Rosara actually was mistaken, that she wasn't really being welcomed and that as an equal, and that it really hurt her and her mother both to discover this truth. And that painful experience taught her something about her life and the other people in the world, and it's part of growing up that was painful. So when I come back to my middle section of my closing, these were literally the last sentences I wrote for each of those 3 body paragraphs. In the stolen party, Rosara is desperate to exert her independence and prove her mother wrong. Throughout the party, she has experiences that seem to prove that she was mature enough to understand the complex social dynamic between her and Luciana better than her mother. And in the end, however, both mother and daughter are hurt and disappointed to realize the truth. These 3 sentences recap the main points I was making in those body paragraphs to prove my theme. Now, here's the part that I think many people find difficult. How do I back up even further, make my ideas even broader so that they're relatable outside of my particular story I'm talking about or outside of the novel you're writing about? These last few sentences in your closing need to relate to anything you might read in life with relationship to theme. So here's how I'm going to end mine. Many authors use their writing to draw our attention to issues in human relationships or society as a whole. Pause there for a second. This is an idea we talked about a lot in this unit on theme, this novel study focused on theme. We said that Themes often reflect the question and concerns of society, and that authors are noticing something happening in the world and they want to get us thinking about it, so they write a story in which the protagonist has to deal with this issue and they realize something about it by the end of the story to get us thinking about it. So really what I'm doing here is making a statement basically about how authors communicate theme and what a theme is. But this can apply to any book. So, my first sentence, many authors use their writing to draw our attention to issues in human relationships or society as a whole. When we read, we spend time with characters and immerse ourselves in their struggles. During that time, the author is focusing our thoughts on an issue that he or she feels is important and worth our time to consider. The conflict the author creates for the character and the way the author chooses to resolve this conflict reveals the theme we, as readers, are meant to be left thinking about long after we turn the final page. Do you see how these final sentences really are much broader ideas I'm sharing as the writer of my essay on why I think it's important that we pay attention to theme, what theme is, and why it matters to us as readers? So here's what my complete closing looks like, start to finish, read all the way through for the flow of it. Many young people can't wait to grow up, to be seen as mature and to be given independence. But the process of gaining these things can be marked by painful and disappointing experiences. In The Stolen Party, Rosaura is desperate to exert her independence and prove her mother wrong. Throughout the party, she has experiences that seem to prove that she was mature enough to understand the complex social dynamic between her and Luciana better than her mother did. In the end, however, both mother and daughter are hurt and disappointed to realize the truth. Many authors use their writing to draw our attention to issues in human relationships or society as a whole. When we read, we spend time with characters and immerse ourselves in their struggles. During that time, the author is focusing our thoughts on issues that he or she feels is important, on an issue that he or she feels is important and worth our time to consider. The conflict the author creates for her character and the way the author chooses to resolve this conflict reveals the theme we, as readers, are meant to be left thinking about long after we turn the final page. I hope this breakdown helps you have a sense of how to tackle your closing paragraph. Please feel free to go back and watch different portions of this screencast and pause it and work on your closing chunk by chunk. Good luck.